Hi! Welcome to my first Q&A where you guys ask questions and I answer them. So the way that this Q&A is going to work is that I broke down the questions into three main parts. So the first one is general, which is just general questions about me. And then the second one is photography, which are the questions about photography. And the last part is about the Instagram stories. Let's get into the first part, which are the general questions. So first of all, how old are you? So right now as I'm filming this, I'm 19 years old. And I'm gonna turn 20 in 2 weeks. Do you go to school? What school? What's your major? So yes, I do go to school. I'm in college right now. I'm in my third year of college and I go to the University of the Philippines. I study business administration. Third, where do you work? What made you decide to work at such a young age? So yeah, I realized that I've been posting a lot on my Instagram stories that I work at this place. It's called Soul Republic and it's a sneaker boutique that resells rare sneakers basically. And I work there part-time, so after class I go there for a few hours and take photos. So my main job there is actually just to take photos and post them online on their social media. So that includes Instagram and Facebook. Where is your shirt from? So I got this shirt from Uniqlo, and this one as well, this one too, and this one, also this one, and this, and this, among others. So yeah, most of my shirts are from Uniqlo. But if you're talking about this one, that's from H&M. Next. What's your favorite food? I love pizza and ramen. It's a toss-up between those two. And last for the general questions, do you have any other hobbies besides photography? So yeah, before I got into photography, I was into kind of making films. And I also had gigs where I sang and played guitar. That actually made up most of my high school. And it was only at the tail end of high school where I got into photography. And talking about photography, part 2 is the questions about photography. So number 1, when and how did you start taking photos? So the story behind it was basically my mom bought me a DSLR because I asked for one. And I was interested in taking photos. This was after the time everyone kind of had DSLRs and people were moving on to having smartphones to take photos. And I never had a DSLR when I was younger, so I wanted to try one out. And at first, I was really into sneakers, so I would just take photos of all the sneakers I could find. Here are some of the photos I took. And yeah, that's how it kind of started for me. So I was just taking photos of my friends' sneakers, my sneakers, all kinds of sneakers, and I was really interested in that type of photography. So that kind of ties in with what I do now as my part-time job. So I kind of have a history of taking photos of sneakers, and now it's kind of my job. Second, this is a question I get asked quite a lot. How do you edit your photos and what apps do you use? So basically I use Lightroom and Photoshop. So I use Lightroom to make my preliminary edits. So that's where I kind of get the base look of my photo. And I use Photoshop to go in depth and kind of tweak the photo even more to get the exact look I want. I like Photoshop because it has the layers and you're able to stack layers. Unlike in Lightroom, the way I use Lightroom is just to basically get the colors where I want them and get the white balance where I want them, exposure and stuff like that. And when the colors are in kind of the ballpark that I want, I use Photoshop to get them exactly where I want. Another question I get asked quite a lot is what camera do you use? So basically I have 4 main cameras. My photography camera, my videography camera, my Instagram story camera, and my GoPro. So this is my main camera. It's the Nikon D750. I really like it because it has really good low light capabilities. So if you've seen my Instagram, most of the photos I take are at night or in really badly lit conditions. And this camera just makes everything so beautiful in low light, and that's why I love it. And if I could upgrade, I wouldn't even. I don't think that Nikon has anything yet that kinda does what the D750 can do for my photography. Another plus is it has this tilty, swivelly screen, and that's really useful for getting those really low shots, different angled shots. And yeah, so far I'm really happy. And then the camera I use for videos, which is filming this video right now, it's the Sony a6300. I really love this camera because it's small and lightweight, and it has really good video, and its low light is quite impressive. It's almost as good as the D750 for an APS-C sensor. And it shoots 4K video and it does 120 frames slow-mo, so that's pretty useful. And my third camera is the G7X. It's the Mark I version. I bought this in 2015 and it's still serving me quite well. I'll get to talking about it more later because there was a question asked about this camera. So yeah. And lastly, my fourth camera is just the GoPro Hero 4 Black. And basically I use that for underwater shots and any other shots that I wouldn't put my other cameras in. When did you start liking photography? So I've always been taking photos. So I used to take photos on this tiny little Canon camera and I would take photos of my dad doing triathlons and duathlons, and that's kind of where I got interested in photography, but I never really pursued it back then. Only until the latter part of high school, where I got a DSLR, is when I actually really got into photography. What are your favorite places to shoot? So one of the main places where most of my photos on Instagram are shot is in Makati. It's in a place called Poblacion. It's kind of a district where there's a lot of bars and pubs, and with those bars and stuff comes a lot of neon lights, and that's why I love shooting there. How did you start this whole IG page and all? So yeah, I think I started my Instagram in 2015. I'm not actually sure. So yeah, I just take photos of my friends, and yeah, that's how I started it. And it's only kind of picked up recently. So yeah, I've been at it for quite a while, and you know, just keep on doing it because it's what I like to do. The next question is, why blue and pink? And the reason for that is because blue and pink are like my favorite colors. Are your double exposure pics post-processed or done during the shot? So if you're talking about this, or this, the double exposure effect of these photos are all done post-processed. So I just layer them in Photoshop and play with the different blending modes to get those effects. How do you market yourself as a photographer? So the way I do it is just keep on taking photos, post it on Instagram, take jobs, and eventually, people will be able to see that you're a photographer, you post your photos on Instagram, and it's important to put that little thing there where they can hire you, so they can email you and you can get jobs. So the next question is, what do you prefer to use, the 50mm or the 35mm? So for me, most of my photos on Instagram are taken on the 50mm 1.8. So yeah, I really like the 50mm focal length, and I think everything just looks really nice on the 50mm. Not to say that the 35mm doesn't look good, but I just really prefer the 50mm for portraits and all this stuff on my Instagram. What are some important tips you can give a beginner photographer? So basically, I'd say that you should take photos whenever you have the opportunity. With practice comes perfect. I know it's kind of cliche, but especially with photography, the more you do it, the better you'll be at it. You'll be better at looking for different angles. You'll be better at using your camera and knowing your camera, which is a very important thing because you don't want to be fumbling around your camera during a shoot. And for editing, you'll have more material to edit with. Best camera for beginners. So depending on the type of system you want to go on, Nikon, Canon, Sony, depending on your budget, for photography, you should go with a Nikon. I started out on Canon. My first DSLR was Canon, but then when I wanted to upgrade, I decided that Nikon had better images for me, and you could do a lot more with the dynamic range of a Nikon. So I'd say something like a D5500, or if you have a little bit more of a budget, you can go with the Nikon D7200 or even the D7500. Will you be up for events? Yes, I actually do shoot events. And the last part of this Q&A is the Instagram stories. So the first question is, what made you get started on posting daily vlogs on your IG stories? So I actually started when I saw this video of Peter McKinnon. I'll put his link down below. He had this guest over on this video to speak about the potential of your Instagram stories. And what he did was he posted like these little films from every day and put them on his Instagram stories. That very morning, I was inspired to do the same and try my own style at it. Next is, what software do you use to edit your videos? Final Cut Pro. Where do you get your background music from? So I get all the music from YouTube. Is the orientation of your camera in portrait for your IG stories? Yes. How do you make your stories transition so smooth? I plan all my shots. Have you ever made a mistake while trying to upload these awesome and unique IG stories? Yes, one time before I accidentally skipped on one 15-second clip, and 2 hours later I watched it back and it didn't make sense, so I had to delete everything, then repost it. And lastly, what camera would you recommend for vlogging? So a camera I would recommend to start out on vlogging or video making in general is the Canon G7X. It's really small, but it has really good video. For vlogging, it has this flip out screen, which is really useful when framing your shots. Although I gotta say, it can get really distracting when you're like looking up at the other screen and not at the lens of the camera, like this right now. So that could be a downside, but it's really useful in general. This was my first vlogging camera back in 2015. I've used it ever since. And even if I've upgraded already to the A6300, I still usually use this for my Instagram stories because it's really built well, and this guy's a trooper. It's gone through a lot. It's fallen so many times. So yeah, that's my first Q&A. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoy content like this, and subscribe for more videos. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed. I don't really know how to end this. So yeah.